Welcome to the deep dive, where we stop scrolling, pick up the source material, and uncover the fascinating truths lurking beneath the surface of the world's biggest stories.
And today we are taking a really concentrated look at, well, a towering figure in modern drama.
So, Philip Anthony Hopkins.
We are dissecting 6 decades of a career that's it's defined by this phenomenal intensity and this almost terrifying level of control.
Yeah, that's the word, control. I mean, if you think of Hopkins, you probably think of that chilling intellectual calm he brings to his character.
Exactly, whether he's, consuming the terminally rude as Hannibal Lecter.
Right.
Or grappling with the devastating fragility of memory in his second Oscar-winning role, The Father.
And that's what this is about. This isn't just us listing his credits. It's about trying to understand the engine behind it all.
What makes him tick?
Right. Our mission today is to really explore how this Welsh legend achieves such unparalleled longevity. We're going to analyze how his deep-seated psychological complexity, which is, rooted in his struggles with confidence and his personal life, how that translated into his creative method.
So how did this almost obsessive preparation combine with this profound psychological insight to shape one of the most compelling actors Britain has ever produced?
Nope, that's the question.
And the sources we've got, they paint a really comprehensive portrait of a true modern master. That's actually a title he was given, a reference to the Moulton Modern Master Award he got back in 2000.
So to really appreciate the scale of this deep dive, I think we need to establish his stature right from the very start.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this man's shelf must be groaning under the weight of his achievements. Let's list the majors to frame this conversation.
Okay, let's start with the big one, the Oscars. He has 2 Academy Awards for Best Actor. First for Silence of the Lambs, and then decades later for The Father. And that span, winning the highest honor in film over a 30-year period, I mean, that's virtually unmatched.
Incredible.
And beyond that, he's got 4 BAFTA awards, including the big one, the BAFTA Fellowship, in 2008 for his lifetime achievement.
And his success wasn't just on the big screen, was it?
Not at all. He has 2 Primetime Emmy Awards for his groundbreaking television work, and this is critical, a Laurence Olivier Award for his stage triumph in the play Pravda.
So he mastered all 3 mediums.
Every single one. And then, of course, there's the knighthood. Queen Elizabeth II conferred the title Sir on him in 1993 for his services to drama.
It's the official stamp, a British cultural institution.
It is, but he's also a truly transnational figure. He holds dual citizenship, UK and US, becoming a naturalized US citizen in April of 2000.
So he operates across that Atlantic divide, kind of bridging that high British seriousness with American blockbuster accessibility.
Perfectly put.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand the master of control, we have to start with the young man who felt, entirely out of control.
Philip Anthony Hopkins.
Born on New Year's Eve, 1937, in Port Talbot, Wales. His father, Richard Arthur Hopkins, was a baker running a modest working-class business.
And that working-class origin story is absolutely central to his psychological makeup. The sources really highlight that his father's values weren't just influential, they were this constant grounding force.
Right.
Hopkins said that whenever he started feeling the ego of fame or, the vanity of being special, he would deliberately recall his father.
What did he remember?
He'd remember his hands, his hardened, broken hands. It was this self-imposed psychological check just to make sure he never strayed too far from the reality of hard work. It's a very Welsh working-class anchor.
And what's so remarkable, especially given his later intellectual command on screen, is how poorly he did in school.
Oh, terrible.
His early school days are consistently described as unproductive. He was sent to a couple of different schools, Jones's West Monmouth Boys' School and then Cowbridge Grammar School.
Which were attempts by his parents to instill discipline.
But it just wouldn't take, at least not in a traditional academic sense. Instead, he channeled all that energy into these solitary pursuits: art, painting, drawing, and most importantly, the piano.
And this is a really critical detail. It lays the foundation for his later professional discipline. When he was asked about his youth, he made this truly shocking self-assessment in 2002.
What did he say?
He admitted, "I was a poor learner," which left me open to ridicule and gave me an inferiority complex. I grew up absolutely convinced I was stupid.
Wow. So imagine that. A genius actor hailed for his intellect, carrying this lifelong conviction that he was fundamentally unintelligent.
That kind of conviction, it drives a very particular kind of overcompensation.
So if he felt stupid in the classroom, he needed another way out. And that's where Richard Burton comes in, right?
Exactly. Burton, another formidable Welshman, he was the template. Hopkins met him when he was just 15.
Were they close?
No, not at all. Hopkins later clarified it was more of a chance encounter in their shared hometown. But the impact of seeing this local figure achieve massive success in the dramatic arts was clearly motivational. Burton showed him that acting was a viable, a powerful escape from the bakery life.
So he starts on the formal path pretty soon after that. He graduated from the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama in 1957, but before London and stardom, there was a mandatory detour.
Right, national service. 2 years between 58 and 60 serving in the Royal Artillery as Gunner Hopkins.
A period of rigorous discipline.
Which maybe inadvertently helped curb some of that restless energy that had plagued his school years. And right after his service, he went straight to the heart of the British acting establishment, RA.
The Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. He graduated in 1963.
But the real career catalyst, the moment that transformed him from just a promising graduate into a genuine force, that came in 1965, and it was courtesy of the legend himself, Laurence Olivier.
Olivier, at the height of his power, director of the Royal National Theatre, he spots Hopkins.
And just invites him to join the company. This was the ultimate apprenticeship. Hopkins was thrust into the highest echelon of theatrical performance.
And the crucial breakthrough came in 67. Hopkins was understudying Olivier in Strindberg's The Dance of Death.
An intensely demanding play.
And then Olivier is suddenly struck down with appendicitis, so Hopkins, the understudy, is forced onto the stage. The moment must have been terrifying.
Terrifying, but the result was legendary. Olivier's review of that substitution, which is preserved in his memoir, is probably the most famous piece of feedback Hopkins ever got.
What did he write?
He wrote that Hopkins walked away with a part of Edgar, like a cat with a mouse between its teeth.
Wow. An image of silent, predatory control.
The very trait that would define his most famous roles decades later.
And surprisingly, that was also the moment that ended his crippling stage fright. He'd been plagued by nerves, the same thing that made him miserable in school, just reappearing on stage.
And Olivier gave him what sounds like tough love, but it turned out to be essential advice. When Hopkins mentioned his anxiety, Olivier just told him, "Remember, nerves is vanity. You're wondering what people think of you. To hell with them, just jump off the edge."
That's powerful. The idea that focusing on the audience's judgment is a form of ego.
It freed him. It freed him to focus purely on the work. It became his doctrine. Complete commitment, zero self-consciousness.
And with that philosophy, his screen career began to take off pretty quickly. His debut was in '68, playing Richard the Lionheart in The Lion in Winter.
And he got a BAFTA nomination for it. Supporting actor right out of the gate.
That's a serious indicator of talent, to step into a period piece with established stars and immediately get that level of recognition.
And television really cemented his reputation for inhabiting these complex historical roles. He was universally acclaimed for playing Pierre Bezukhov in the BBC's epic War and Peace in 1972.
He won a BAFTA for that, didn't he? Best Actor.
He did. He proved he could sustain a performance across many hours and just anchor a massive production.
This decade is also where his deep, lasting association with the director Richard Attenborough began.
Attenborough directed him in 5 films. And his assessment of Hopkins during this era is, well, it's definitive.
What did he say?
Attenborough called him unquestionably the greatest actor of his generation.
And this was back in the 1970s.
In the 70s, before Hannibal Lecter, before The Remains of the Day, Attenborough saw this raw, unmatched technical brilliance. It just confirms that Hopkins didn't emerge fully formed in the 90s. He was already operating at an elite level, even while he was still grappling with his own confidence.
So moving into the 1980s, we see Hopkins caught in this creative tug of war. He's trying to conquer Hollywood, but he's still feeling that magnetic pull of British theater.
The decade starts with a real high watermark. David Lynch's extraordinary film, The Elephant Man, in 1980.
Hopkins played the empathetic surgeon, Sir Frederick Treves.
And The Elephant Man was a huge success, critically and commercially. 8 Oscar nominations. It really showcased his ability to provide this calm, intellectual center to a deeply disturbing story.
But in the very same year, we get the first hint of his discomfort with the Hollywood machine.
Right.
He co-starred with Shirley MacLaine in a romantic comedy, A Change of Seasons, and it was a disaster.
Total disaster, critically and at the box office. And it frustrated him immensely, and he did not hold back his feelings about it.
What did he say?
He later called MacLaine the most obnoxious actress I have ever worked with.
Wow.
But this isn't just a petty actor spat, you know? It speaks to his core values. Hopkins demands discipline, focus, a serious approach.
So when he found himself in a project that felt lightweight or poorly executed,
He felt this profound creative disdain. It just confirmed his suspicion that the stage, with its rigorous demands, was maybe a safer haven for serious actors.
And yet, despite those frustrations with film, his television work was consistently sublime. He got 2 Primetime Emmys during this period.
He did. The first was in '76 for the Lindbergh kidnapping case, but the second, playing Adolf Hitler in the 1981 TV film The Bunker. That is essential context for understanding Lecter.
He was tackling the monumental challenge of humanizing pure evil.
And the critics immediately saw this specific genius at work. The New York Times review said that Hopkins succeeded in making the monster too understandable,
giving him decidedly pathetic dimensions.
He avoided the cliché, the screaming caricature. He went for the chilling banality of the man. And this ability to inject flawed humanity into figures of monumental malice, well, that became his trademark.
Still, the stage beckoned him back, and in the mid-'80s he returned to the British theater for this triumphant run.
This was arguably the zenith of his modern stage career. He starred in David Hare's hugely successful satire Pravda.
Which was about the newspaper industry during the Thatcher era.
Exactly. He played this ruthless media mogul, Lambert Leroux, a perversely brilliant modern-day barbarian, as he called him. And he won the Olivier Award for it. Outstanding achievement. It was theater's definitive stamp of approval.
Then he followed that up by taking on King Lear in '86 at the National Theater, which he always said was his favorite Shakespearean role.
He seemed to have reached this perfect equilibrium between praise, command, and fulfillment.
But it didn't last.
No. The intense commitment required by the stage, we're performing the same show 6 nights a week, no retakes, it eventually broke him.
His last stage role was M. Butterfly in the West End in 1989, and it brought his stage career to a screeching halt.
He hated it so much he described the experience as a torment.
He told an anecdote about it, didn't he?
He did. He recalled a matinee where he realized the entire audience was made up of Japanese tourists who didn't react to any of the comedy. He went back to his dressing room, just defeated, and thought, an open razor, please.
That's bleak.
The stage, which had been his salvation, became a prison built of repetition. He never went back.
And this leads us directly into his mindset just before the biggest role of his life. He'd failed to really break Hollywood. He was burned out on the stage.
He was defeated. He moved to L.A. in the late '70s looking for screen success. But after all the disappointments and the stage fatigue, he returned to London, ready to settle.
He admitted he'd all but given up on Hollywood.
Yeah, he resigned himself to the idea that he would just have to settle for being a respectable actor pouncing around the West End.
Thinking, at 50, that he was essentially finished with ambition.
And the ultimate irony is that it was precisely that moment of profound creative defeat that preceded the role that would make him immortal.
And then the 1990s started with a phone call. And suddenly, the global image of Anthony Hopkins was forged forever. Hannibal Lecter.
The Silence of Lambs, 1991.
The character became a cultural phenomenon. It led to his first Academy Award for Best Actor. And here's the fact that just perfectly illustrates the power of his control. He was on screen for less than 16 minutes.
16 minutes in the entire film. The impact was completely disproportionate to the screen time.
The casting was so deliberate. The director, Jonathan Demme, specifically sought a British actor because, as Jodie Foster said, Lecter wasn't just some crude monster.
No, he needed the presence of a Shakespearean monster. Someone who used language and intellect to just lock people in place. He needed that classical theatrical gravitas Hopkins had perfected under Olivier.
And what's so fascinating is how he built the performance using little pieces of his own past. That iconic, chilling, sucking noise.
That wasn't some intellectual character choice.
Not good at all.
It was pure mischief. Hopkins admitted that was the exact noise he used to make to frighten girls when he was a boy in Port Talbot.
He took that tiny detail of childhood impishness and integrated it into the world's most sophisticated sociopath.
And that power was felt immediately, even before they started filming. He recounted the table read,
where he delivered his first line to Jodie Foster.
"Good morning. You're one of Jack Crawford's, aren't you?" And Hopkins said the entire room, producers included, just froze. The silence was broken by a producer saying, "Holy crap, don't change a thing."
That one line established everything. The character didn't need to shout. His control was total.
And that role just launched the second chapter of his career. He reprised Lecter in Hannibal and Red Dragon.
The reviews for Hannibal were mixed, but commercially it was explosive, broke international box office records.
But he knew where to draw the line. He famously refused to come back for the prequel, Hannibal Rising.
He'd exhausted his take on the character.
And it was during this time he offered his own philosophical boundary for the killer, a really sardonic justification that only Hopkins could deliver.
Right. He called Lecter the Robin Hood of killers.
He kills the terminally rude.
That phrase, terminally rude, it just encapsulates the sophistication he brought to it. It allows him to play Lecter not just as a killer, but as a kind of vigilante, a connoisseur with his own bizarre moral code.
Finding that kernel of self-justification is what makes the monster so terrifying and so palatable to the audience.
But the genius of the 90s is the immediate pivot he made away from the monster. He used his new box office power to delve into quiet, repressed English drama.
His Merchant Ivory peak. This is where we see that stillness truly shine. He was in Howard's End in '92 as the cold businessman, Henry Wilcox.
And then he reunited with them and Emma Thompson for the seminal 1993 film, The Remains of the Day.
Playing Stevens, the deeply repressed, emotionally sterile butler whose entire life is defined by service and his inability to express love.
Hopkins named that as one of his favorite films. It got him his second BAFTA and another Oscar nomination.
It's the ultimate contrast to Lecter, isn't it? Lecter is all about overwhelming control delivered through language. Stevens is overwhelming control delivered through a lack of language, through physical paralysis.
Morgan Freeman actually cited that performance as a crucial lesson in eloquent stillness, the power of just being and letting the camera capture the internal life.
That decade also really showed his mastery of the biopic. He had this run of intense historical roles.
Right. He was nominated for an Oscar for playing Richard Nixon in Oliver Stone's Nixon.
And before that, another BAFTA nomination for playing C.S. Lewis in Shadowlands, again with Emma Thompson. He just disappeared into the cadence and mannerisms of these real recognizable figures.
Which brings us to that legendary story from the set of Amistad in 1997.
Where his obsessive preparation just paid off in the most spectacular way.
And earned him the awe of Hollywood royalty.
Director Steven Spielberg was completely floored. Hopkins was playing John Quincy Adams, and he had to deliver this monumental 7-page courtroom speech.
A staggering amount of dialogue.
And Hopkins not only memorized it to perfection, he delivered the entire complex sequence in a single take. Spielberg was so stunned he insisted on calling him Sir Anthony for the rest of the shoot.
That level of technical command is just, it's so rare.
It showed his professionalism, too. It's probably why he was so comfortable working with non-human co-stars like Bart the Bear.
Right, in Legends of the Fall on the Edge.
And the bear trainer noted that Hopkins treated Bart with respect, like a fellow actor.
By 1998, this combination of artistic integrity and box office reliability just made him untouchable. He was Britain's highest-paid performer.
Commanding a reported $15 million fee to reprise Lecter, the 90s really belonged to him.
So as the 21st century dawned, Hopkins was this established master, lending his gravitas to all sorts of projects. We saw him narrate How the Grinch Stole Christmas,
showing his vocal control could even elevate a children's tale,
while also continuing the commercial success of the Lecter franchise. But he still sought out those small personal projects that really resonated with him.
He often cited his role as Burt Munro in The World's Fastest Indian from 2005 as his favorite and easiest part.
Why was that?
He just felt a deep connection to Munro, explaining that they shared a similar, fundamentally optimistic outlook on life and this relentless drive.
Then came the unexpected pivot into, well, high-octane fantasy and blockbusters.
Right. If you wanted institutional gravitas in a fantasy world, you hired Sir Anthony Hopkins. He became Odin, the All-Father, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Across 3 Thor films.
It's not a world known for its nuanced dramatic performances, but Hopkins delivered that necessary weight and pathos to the God King of Asgard.
He also did another high-profile biopic, playing the director himself in Hitchcock in 2012.
But the real emotional and creative turning point of this whole decade wasn't a blockbuster. It was a return to the themes of the stage he had so bitterly abandoned.
Right. In 2015, he starred opposite his good friend Ian McKellen in the BBC adaptation of The Dresser.
And this performance was profoundly personal for him.
Why did this feel different from the stage work that had tormented him before?
He was playing Sir, an aging, egotistical, and deeply insecure actor-manager who is struggling mentally to go on stage. Hopkins just connected with that character's frailty and self-doubt.
He called it the highlight of my life.
Yeah, and a chance to finally work with the kind of actors he had run away from when he quit the theater.
So the role was almost a form of therapy for him. It let him rewrite that stage narrative.
Precisely. He realized that his lifelong sense of being a loner and his stage panic were All in my imagination, all in my vanity.
And accepting the role of the insecure, fading actor helped him find peace with his own professional identity.
And that self-acceptance seemed to fuel this final, massive screen resurgence.
A resurgence that included acclaimed prestige TV. He starred as Dr. Robert Ford in Westworld.
For which he got an Emmy nomination. That role, too, played perfectly to his strengths-controlled, philosophical, a little bit menacing.
He then revisited his favorite Shakespearean role, Lear, in a devastating 2018 TV film, again with Emma Thompson. Vulture magazine called the performance devastating.
And just before his second Oscar win, he gave this beautifully subtle performance as Pope Benedict XVI in The Two Popes.
Opposite Jonathan Pryce's Pope Francis, the chemistry was palpable.
And Hopkins pointed out their shared Welsh heritage. He's from the north and I'm from the south. A small detail, but it speaks to his comfort when working with actors who share his background and discipline.
But the culminating moment, the grand finale of this resurgence, was The Father in 2020.
Playing an octogenarian struggling with Alzheimer's. The critical acclaim was just. It was bordering on reverence.
The performance was technically perfect, heartbreakingly vulnerable, and deeply authentic.
And it resulted in his second Academy Award for Best Actor, making him, at age 83, the oldest person to ever win an acting Oscar.
And he wasn't even at the ceremony.
No, he accepted the award the next day in a video from Wales, saying with just tremendous humility, at 83 years of age, I did not expect to get this award. And he used the opportunity to pay sincere tribute to the late Chadwick Boseman.
That humility and drive have continued. He was in Armageddon Time in 2022.
Playing a kindly grandfather, a role he based on his own grandfather who encouraged him to act. The New York Times praised how he found the essential grit hiding underneath the twinkle.
And he's showing absolutely no sign of retiring. The future slate is astonishingly busy.
He's playing Sir Nicholas Winton in One Life, Sigmund Freud in Freud's Last Session, and Herod the Great for Netflix. It seems like this combination of his professional peak and his personal self-acceptance has made him more creatively fertile than ever.
Now we have to turn to the core mystery. How does he do it? And the foundation of his entire career is built on this massive artistic paradox.
The doctrine of over-preparation.
It's so fascinating, right? Using this obsessive, almost mechanical process to achieve an effect of total, effortless spontaneity.
It's completely counterintuitive to everything we think we know about acting.
He's famous for his line learning method. Once he's on a project, he will go over his lines, reading them and saying them aloud upwards of 200 times.
200 times. He does this until the words just cease being a conscious thought. The goal is to internalize the text so deeply that when he's on set, he can deliver them without thinking.
So the discipline isn't really about memorization. It's about making the material pure muscle memory.
Exactly. The lines have to be so automatic that his conscious mind is free to focus entirely on the emotional state of the character in that moment, as if the words are being discovered for the very first time.
The intense groundwork has to be completely invisible to the audience.
He strives for an almost casual style of delivery that belies the amount of groundwork done beforehand. If you think back to that Amistad speech, 7 pages in one take, that's the result of preparation that just transcends the need for multiple takes.
And this method had profound, sometimes difficult consequences on set. He prefers speed and spontaneity,
which often clashed with actors who preferred exhausting intellectual rehearsals. The prime example is Jabra Winger on the set of Shadowlands.
She wanted extensive rehearsal, drilling every moment. Hopkins preferred to save it for the camera.
And Richard Attenborough, who understood Hopkins better than anyone, had to become a mediator.
What did he do?
Attenborough found this brilliant way to accommodate him. He would use a stand-in for Hopkins during Winger's exhaustive rehearsals, and only bring Hopkins in for the very last rehearsal before filming.
So he was protecting Hopkins' gift.
He was. Attenborough said it protected his extraordinary ability to make you believe when you hear him that it is the very first time he has ever said that line.
That first-time feeling is his trademark.
And what's interesting is the flip side of that obsessive preparation is how quickly he discards the text afterward.
Unlike other classical actors who can recall their lines years later, Hopkins says once filming wraps, he discards them immediately, wipes the slate clean.
It's professional, creative ruthlessness. Moving past the lines, his physical technique is characterized by 2 distinct forms of control. First, that eloquent stillness we talked about.
Right, from The Remains of the Day. It's almost an anti-performance technique. By not moving, he forces the audience to project the emotional turmoil onto him.
It's highly active performance through total physical restraint. which leads to his second technique, the submarine approach.
The submarine approach. What does that mean in practical terms?
He explained that the goal is to be less demonstrative, especially in scenes of high tension. He said, "I think the less one shows, the better." The submarine is silent, dangerous, and its presence is felt long before it's seen.
So he contains the villainy, making it a constant, quiet hum just beneath the surface.
Exactly. And finally, we have to talk about his underappreciated talent as a mimic. It's central to his transformations.
His mastery of dialect is profound. He can just erase his native Welsh accent.
And the ultimate technical display of this came during the restoration of Kubrick's Spartacus.
They needed to re-record audio for a lost scene featuring his mentor, Laurence Olivier.
And they needed someone who could replicate Olivier's specific vocal tone and cadence perfectly. On the recommendation of Olivier's widow, Joan Plowright, Hopkins stepped in.
What did he do?
He listened to the sound clips and just flawlessly recreated the voice of the late Lord Olivier, preserving the scene. This wasn't just acting, it was high-level vocal reconstruction. It proves his preparation lets him not only master his own voice, but literally inhabit the voice of others.
The intensity we've discussed, the 200 repetitions, the control, the mimicry, it all suggests a brain operating on a different plane.
And the sources confirm that Hopkins has always maintained this rich, creative life completely outside of acting.
He's a true Renaissance man, and his first great love was music.
He confessed that he actually wanted to go to music college, but felt he wasn't clever enough and had to settle for being an actor. But that ambition never died. He's been composing music his entire adult life.
He even had some mainstream success. He released a single, Distant Star, in 1986.
Which, surprisingly, charted in the UK. He's also composed major concert works like The Mask of Time.
But the most poetic musical story is about his waltz, and the waltz goes on.
He composed it when he was just 26 back in 1964. For nearly 5 decades, he never heard it performed.
What happened?
He submitted it to the renowned Dutch conductor André Rieu, who premiered it in Vienna with his orchestra in 2011. Imagine that, composing something in your youth and only hearing it realized in a grand concert hall nearly 50 years later.
It just underscores the depth of his creative necessity, completely independent of his fame.
And he also stepped behind the camera. His directing debut was a film about his fellow Welsh poet, Dylan Thomas, Return Journey. Then he adapted Chekhov's Uncle Vanya into the film August, but he reset the action in his beloved Wales.
That intense focus and drive, though, it often comes at a personal cost. And we have to address the difficult parts of his inner life, specifically his recovery.
He is a recovering alcoholic. He's been sober since just after Christmas, 1975.
And he attributed his turning point not to willpower, but to making a quantum leap by finally asking for help.
He described that act as a form of prayer, influenced by a woman in recovery who advised him simply to just trust in God. It was a moment of surrendering the very control he so obsessively uses in his work.
And that surrender seems to have evolved into a deeper spirituality.
It has. He's moved beyond agnosticism. He says he is compelled to believe there's something bigger than me, concluding with this incredible philosophical humility, I'm just a microbe.
And that acknowledgement of smallness, he found, brought him immense personal relief.
His unusual intensity might also be explained by a diagnosis he revealed later in life. He was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome.
Right. He said he was on the high end of the spectrum.
And by 2020, he had reframed the condition, calling it a great gift, actually.
How so?
Well, Asperger's is often characterized by intense focus on detail and a dedication to routines. When you connect that back to his ritual of repeating lines 200 times and his unique ability for mimicry, the diagnosis provides this clear structural explanation for his singular professional method.
His need for obsessive preparation might be a direct expression of his neurotype.
It's very possible. And that control, it wasn't just internalized, it was channeled back into his roots. He became a significant philanthropist for Wales.
He was president of the National Trust's Snowdonia Appeal.
And he didn't just lend his name. He donated £1 million toward the $3 million needed to purchase parts of the park for preservation.
He also supported arts education, contributing to the Anthony Hopkins Center at his alma mater, the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama.
And in a lovely nod to Welsh culture, he's the patron of the Tommy Cooper Society, even unveiling a statue of the beloved comedian in 2008. He put on Cooper's trademark fez and did a comic routine,
showing that even the knighted master maintains that core of theatrical fun.
But finally, we have to touch upon the complexity of his personal family life. He's been married 3 times, and he maintains an estranged relationship with his daughter, from his first marriage.
When he was asked about whether he has grandchildren, his response was starkly honest.
It was. He said, I don't have any idea. People break up, families split, and, get on with your life. People make choices. I don't care one way or the other.
That is a brutal admission of detachment.
It is. And he acknowledged his own failings, stating, I guess I am selfish. I have not been a good husband or father. It's a moment of sober reflection in the sources. It reminds us that the genius and the absolute focus required for 6 decades of world-class performance often comes at the price of traditional family connection.
So we have completed the deep dive into the paradoxical life of Sir Anthony Hopkins. We've seen an arc that stretches from an insecure student in Port Talbot, convinced he was stupid, to the terrifying brilliance under Olivier.
He survived a debilitating fear of the stage, achieved shocking global fame with the tightly controlled chaos of Hannibal Lecter, and then experienced this late-career resurgence, winning his second Oscar well into his 80s.
The sources reveal a life governed by 2 driving forces: that deep psychological need to overcome the feeling of being stupid, and the unique neural hardwiring of his Asperger's, which fueled his obsessive dedication.
He channeled internal struggle into external mastery. He ultimately found profound relief in sobriety and spiritual humility, realizing his own place as just a microbe in the vast universe. This disciplined, complex man, a mimic, a composer, a philanthropist, is just a testament to the power of structured focus.
It's the ultimate lesson in using control to gain freedom.
And that brings us back to the heart of his artistic paradox. A final thought for you to carry with you. We know Hopkins repeats his lines 200 times to achieve a delivery so natural it sounds like the first time.
And then he immediately discards them, wipes the slate clean for the next performance.
The technical control is absolute, almost mechanical, to ensure the performance is purely emotional and spontaneous.
So the question this raises is profound.
When does that level of perfect preparation cease being about memory and become instead about creating the ultimate space for genuine, relaxed vulnerability on the day of filming?
By locking down the technical demands through obsessive repetition, he frees his conscious mind entirely.
That discipline, that willingness to perfectly master and then immediately let go, is perhaps the ultimate expression of creative control.
It allows him, finally, to just jump off the edge, just as Olivier instructed him all those decades ago. And if you are keen to delve even deeper into the mind of the master, his memoir, We Did Okay, Kid, is scheduled to be published in November 2025.
That is one journey we are definitely anticipating.